These are Thoughts from My Car, Episode 2. Today I want to talk about what's coming up, what's currently up, and things I'd like to bring up. All while asking the question, can I ever learn the meaning of the word brevity? I'm Rob from SGNR Photo, and I want to thank you for tuning in once again to the only photography podcast that's willing to openly admit that it's recorded from inside of a moving vehicle and doesn't just sound that way. These are Thoughts from My Car. Let's go for a drive. So it is a Tuesday afternoon. I'm on my way into town on a somewhat gray and overcast afternoon. And in spite of the weather, my thoughts are on weddings. I'm actually on my way right now to consult with a client for photography services at their wedding. And it got me thinking that with weddings that are upcoming, in fact, I actually have a wedding I'm going to be shooting in just a couple of days, it would be a great time to go over wedding photography in general. Everything from putting together contracts and, meeting your clients, consulting with your clients, to preparing for the day of, the actual shooting of the wedding, some of my experiences with wedding shooting, and maybe into the editing and so on. I'm not sure how the breakdown is going to be just yet. I don't know if it's going to be mostly just written posts or if I'll do a video or two. I'll definitely have a segment for the podcast. I think that's something I definitely need to do. But I just want to let you know that that is one of the main topics that will be coming up in the very near future for SGNR Photo. And as something of a side note to that, I was having a conversation recently with a photographer that I know on the topic of, oddly enough, wedding photography, but more specifically on the topic of the weekend warrior photographer, the part-time professional, the guy or gal with a camera. And this is a topic that I know has been done to death on a lot of websites, definitely on message boards, but I thought it'd be something interesting to touch on because there were a couple of interesting angles that were not without a hint of irony when the conversation was brought up. So I thought I am going to tread into those waters. I'm not sure if I'll intermingle it with the posts about weddings and wedding photography, or if I'll make it its own sort of standalone series, or maybe it'll just be a rambling, incoherent mess like episode 1 of Thoughts from My Car. I haven't decided on that yet, but it's something that is upcoming. And, of course, if there's anything you think I should add to either of these topics before I start steamrolling through them and publishing them up on the website or on the YouTube channel or from my car, you can always drop me a line, and I'll have the details for that toward the end of the podcast. So that's what's coming up in the near future. And the reason why those are coming up in the near future and they haven't already come out, and we're not barreling into our next topics of discussion, is that I've been a little low-key, a little bit off the radar, kind of keeping to myself a bit, and that's been pretty much by design. I've had a lot on my plate recently outside of the photography world, and in the interest of just answering some questions about what I've been doing lately, and why I've turned to taking my commuting time and turning it into production time, it's been a pretty busy couple of months. Not the least of which has been, of course, the new family unit. In January, I was blessed with the birth of my first son. And, well, first child. is also my son. Not to say that if it was a daughter, I'd be any less blessed. I don't want anybody jumping off the rails on these conclusions, annoying the crap out of me. You do that, I'm sicking the Eloquent Gentleman on you guys. And if you haven't checked out that podcast, please do so. The Eloquent Gentleman. They can be found on Facebook, Twitter, or linked to by HaydenHewitt.com. Definitely worth a listen. But I digress. This past January, I became a father for the first time, and it's been quite the adjustment. You know, you always hear about the stories of, you know, oh boy, it's going to be every 2 hours, you're never going to sleep again. And I can say without a shadow of a doubt that most of that is true. I say most of it, I can't say all of it, because obviously Krista has been absolutely phenomenal as a mom. And she has made this whole first 6 months of our son's life an absolute joy for me. I'm embarrassed by how smooth it is on my side of things, and I want to take this time just to thank her for that sort of thing. That's, you know, how much I appreciate that. And I know, I sounded so sarcastic there for a second. I really mean it. Yeah, that's the problem with these audio podcasts, is I have that type of voice where you never know if I'm being a sarcastic jackass or not. But I meant it in the non-sarcastic, non-jackass way. I really, you know, I can only imagine how much hard work that she does while at home with the boy. It's just amazing. But there have been, you know, it has been an adjustment. It's, you know, obviously with all the hard work that Krista does, it would be really unfair for me to just sort of take off on a weekend and just, you know, book a whole bunch of photo shoots and go out and do a whole bunch of stuff during the early formative months when all the firsts are happening. You know, the first laughs, the first smiles, the first teeth, which we're kind of going through right now. And that's a joy. So yeah, a lot of time has been devoted to the family unit, which is the way it should be. I'm not going to suggest for a second that I'm at all disappointed that I've been shooting less than I normally have. I have gotten to a couple of shoots, and I am embarrassingly behind in my editing because of other projects that I've had, specifically wedding photos that I've been editing. But I'll be getting a lot of new material out soon. Xavier, our son, is, you know, he's starting to get into somewhat of a stable routine, I think. I really don't know, and that's kind of embarrassing. You know, you know, the whole behind the scenes thing with being at home and raising the boy day to day. You know, I don't get to see all of it. I did get to see some of it, though. Not really by design. This was more of a circumstance. Is that at the end of April, the contract that I was working was terminated at my former place of employment, and I got to spend 3 weeks at home with the family unit on a day-to-day basis, all while searching for what is my current job contract. So that's been something that's also been taking up some of the time. That took up most of the month of May in just getting all of that together, and of course going into May and June through, you know, training for the new job and getting into the steady rhythm, and, you know, the nuances of it all. It's taken some time, and I'll admit that to put my focus on making sure that the family is supported, I've once again, you know, slowed down on the personal shoots. And that will be, you know, now that the comfort level is there, that can slowly start coming back. And the reason why that will be slowly coming back and not ramped up into full blast is not only just because because, Xavier's still really young and needs his dad around. But also because of a third thing that's been going on recently, which is that the family unit, and by extension SGNR Photo Worldwide Headquarters, will soon be moving. The new contract that I'm on adds quite a hefty chunk of commuting to my everyday and week-to-week schedule. And so we're looking to move into the city, so I don't necessarily have to spend so much time behind the wheel of my car by myself. Don't worry about the podcast. I'll still find time to ramble on incoherently to all of you from time to time. It just might be over a course of a week, rather than doing it all as one sort of stream of consciousness, vomiting of information. And I would say that's for a lack of a better term, but I don't think there is one. I think that's pretty accurate, especially if you've heard episode 1. I'm going to try not to make them like that anymore. So those are things that have been going on lately. And that's one of the reasons why those upcoming posts that I mentioned at the top of the program, although I don't know if I should call it a program, that's giving myself a little bit too much credit. I actually had a coworker of mine. I mentioned one morning that I had just finished podcasting. I had just finished recording episode 1 of Thoughts from My Car, and it was just as I was pulling into work. I shut off the recording device after I was parked. I was going to, fine-tune it later when I got home. I got in and someone asked me why I was in such a good mood, and I said, well, I just finished podcasting. And they were like, well, while you're driving, how do you read your script? And I thought it was really, really cute that they thought that I would actually script something. The most I have is a hastily scribbled set of notes that are next to me that I occasionally glance down at, just in case I forgot what I was supposed to be talking about when I realize that I've been blabbing on incoherently for 5 minutes on something completely off topic. So for those of you who were wondering about episode 1, no, there's no script. There's no script for today's. I don't foresee anything being scripted. It's just, I get an idea, the recorder's going, I just let loose and hope it makes it to the final cut. Sometimes if I feel, well, it hasn't happened yet, but I'm assuming in theory that if I feel something just doesn't fit, I can just sort of wipe a segment out and be done with it. But as I say, outtakes are for people who are up to date with their posting schedule, so that probably won't happen either. But moving right along, I want to revisit a little something that I spoke about in the last podcast, which is the Indiegogo campaign that I'll be launching on August 1st, and specifically what it's about. And what it's really about in a nutshell is I want to put together some production gear to make better media, more diverse media for all of you, to beef up the podcast, make it sound a little nicer, to beef up the video casts, make them a little prettier, actually have the ability to put myself in my own videos for a change, which I think would be a nice little novelty. So I'm not always going to be this disembodied voice that speaks to you through YouTube or through wherever I'm hosting this podcast at the time that you listen to this. And at the same time, there are some other projects that I do want to work on, not the least of which is a documentary idea that I've had rolling in my mind for a little while. And I can't give too many specifics, if only because I haven't spoken with a lot of the people I want to collaborate with yet, to see if this is actually a project that's feasible. And obviously, when you want to put together a feature, a little bit of money is going to be involved. You need to rent locations to shoot footage at, if footage is needed, and in this case it will be. So there's going to be some studio time needed, maybe some gear rentals, and that's what the whole thing is there to cover. It's just so these types of projects can get off the ground and continue, because some of the gear will be rented, some of the studio space will be rented, but there's going to be some stuff I'm actually going to be buying to make sure that I can use it on a long-term basis to provide some really cool content for all of you on the website. So that, in a nutshell, is what the whole thing is about. It's not about, hey, let's knock down Rob's credit card bill on someone else's dime. It's, hey, let's put together a way to create a whole lot of really cool stuff for all of you. And before I launch it on August the 1st, I'm going to be sort of mulling over what I can do in terms of benefits and rewards if I make my goal. I have a couple of ideas in mind that I'm going to run by Krista just to see what she thinks. But I have the feeling that should the goals be reached, or goal, because it's only one campaign, I think it's going to be a lot of fun for everybody, not just with the rewards, but sort of going forward with ramping up the production. The last thing I want to talk about was, oddly enough, another movie. Another movie that I saw that was recorded entirely using digital SLR cameras. After speaking to someone about the bloated, incoherent mess that was Escape from Tomorrow, someone gave me the recommendation of a little film called For Lovers Only. No, it's not a porno. It's a film from 2011. Oddly enough, another black and white film. And it follows the story of two former lovers who meet back up in Paris after many years and rekindle their romance. And the big plot twist is that both of them are married to other people. So that complicates things a little. But in spite of that, they go through with, a little trip throughout France, rekindling their romance. And it's a very interesting story. Or at least it's very interesting once you get past the setup. I'm not going to lie, the setup takes a while to get to. It's meant to mimic the style of French New Wave cinema. And I'm not really a film snob, so I had to look this up. I'm not a formally trained smug art student or film critic. So Wikipedia was kind of my friend on this. And in looking this up, it's basically everything that I thought it would be. It's meant to be a little faster and looser with the way the narrative is presented. It's meant to put sort of a more down home human. Wow, that sounds horrible. I've made French New Wave sound like Southern hillbilly. So let's try and put this more intelligently. What it's meant to do is basically give it more of a real feel. Where you don't get to hear all of the backstory. You don't get to know that they lived happily ever after. You don't get that Hollywood schmaltz that many romantic types of movies get, where in the end he's going to get the girl and they're going to live happily ever after and love will conquer all. And I'm sure that's a registered trademark of one of the studios, probably Disney. It's not like that at all. Instead, what you do get is a very heavy-handed characterization early on in the movie. You get a lot of overwrought types of emotions out of the characters. you know from the word go, as soon as you meet these characters, before they meet up with each other, that they are full of sadness. They have a deep ennui about them. It's everything that you normally laugh at as a really pretentious romp through the human experience. But if you can get through that setup and get to when they finally meet up with each other, it's kind of worth it if you can get through those first 20 minutes. I found the first 20 minutes to be a little heavy-handed. After that, things get a lot better. It's very fast and loose. It's cut in a very non-traditional way. There's a lot of either really short cuts or really long takes. And it's not like super quick jump editing. It's just the shot goes on for as long as it needs to and then ends and moves to the next shot. And I like that in a story. I like that it doesn't dwell on a specific shot for too long, because the director thinks, wow, this looks really cool. I'm just going to focus on this for 5 minutes longer than it ever needed to go on for, because I really think it's cool. It's a very, very minimalist narrative. It was done like on practically no budget at all. In fact, I understand in doing the research for the film that none of the actors even got paid for this. It was just sort of an experimental thing they threw around. It was one digital handheld SLR that did the A-cam shots. There was a B-cam, also a digital SLR that was put on a tripod so that, they looked like tourists. Again, another theme. No permits, no permission. They just went wherever they want, took their footage, rehearsed it out the wazoo, and nailed the execution. And I got to give them props for that. They really did a good job getting the scenes right. The editing is very tight. It's very, very compact and coherent. It doesn't sprawl on forever, unlike my review of this film. It's been out for a while, and I know it's been through on demand. I know it's definitely available through iTunes. That's really where it made its money, through the iTunes distribution. Apparently, on almost zero budget, they made about $500,000 with this movie, which is amazing. But definitely worth a watch, and definitely an interesting view. Maybe not the most, or maybe not the greatest love story ever told in cinematic history, but definitely a cool way to spend 90 minutes or so. I was entertained. I don't really like romance stories all that much. I tuned into it mostly for the curiosity of seeing another film shot entirely on DSLR. And of course, wanting to put together some short features myself. There's the documentary I just spoke about. I also was looking to put together something for the 2015 72-hour film competition for the Ottawa Film Festival, which basically is, you write a movie, shoot it, edit it, and produce it from beginning to end in 72 hours. So seeing what can be done with some imagination and a very, very small budget, it was really, really nice. Not just from a technical level, but, from a story level. It was a very well-crafted movie, in my opinion. Your mileage may vary. And that's it for today's podcast. Little shorter, hopefully a little sweeter, a little more informative, probably a lot more on topic. Like I said, I'm working on that sort of thing. If you have any comments, questions, concerns, or any relevant information that starts with a k sound, feel free to drop me a line. I'm always available by email, inbox@sgnr.photo. I can also be found on Twitter @sgnrphoto, and of course through the Facebook fan page at facebook.com/sgnrphoto. And if if ever you want one of your questions turned into either a video cast or a thought from my car, include the hashtag AskSGNR, and I'll be happy to do that up for you. Until next time, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for recommending me to your friends, and drive safe.